Donagh was also on the board of the NSC, the National Software Centre in Mahon. And he's also heavily connected in a number of industry groups, especially in the tech game. So, ladies and gents, please put your hands together for Mr. Donagh Kiernan.
Thank you, Aidan, and good evening all. I want to share my own thoughts and views. It's a personal journey I went through in myself, but also I want to talk about certain views and how I challenge other people out there in the industry, because everything I do is with tech CEOs. It's with entrepreneurs. So, I mean, a question I always ask, it's a question I always ask of people who have sold their businesses and seemingly are well achieved and have lots of time and to decide what they want to do with their lives. And I simply ask them, and it stumps some people, just ask them how did they spend their time. Because the simple answer to how you spend your time, and if you ask yourselves that, if you look at your full day or your whole week, what you spend most time is what's most important, supposedly. Or it's earning money to spend that on what's most important to you. But I think many people don't think about it enough and appropriate their time enough to what's important to them because they haven't thought about it. They haven't thought about what's really important to them. I'm an entrepreneur. I always feel funny saying that because back in the early 90s, entrepreneur was synonymous with chancer. Things that Del Boy, Trotter and Arthur Daly out of Minder, if you remember those programs. But it is factual in the definition of entrepreneur, but it doesn't mean that I'm filthy rich. It doesn't mean that I'm a dreamer in what I'm doing. It means that, to me, I'm setting my own path, building my own business, doing what I want to do. Some of this brings me back to one evening, Saturday evening, sitting on the couch watching a movie with my 16-year-old son, and we were watching a science fiction movie, and it painted a future society where business owned governments, and everyone worked for the businesses and paid taxes to the governments, and so I was completely controlled by big business. And I paused the movie to turn around to my son explaining, you don't know how real that is today, except most people do it by personal choice and they don't even realise it. I started my first business in 1994, and I was only a few years out of college. I grew up in a family business, so it was my choice. I wanted to do this. I wanted to lead my own path, do what I wanted to do. Today, I'm very lucky to work with tech entrepreneurs, with people who every day they're driving on their businesses, they're leading a team. In most cases, they are out to change the way the world works. A bit like Donald and the Trust Have team. I admire people like that. They're out there, and it looks like they've absolutely sacrificed everything to drive what they're doing in their businesses. I hear great stories all the time, and with the Web Summit recently, you hear more of these things, of startup companies, how young people with an idea and the ingenuity to go out, and whether they have the technical skills, but to pull a team together to create something. And you hear the stories of them living above a laundrette, the one I'm thinking of lately, and they've got celebrities all over the world that buy into what they're doing online, and they're building a dream. Now, those stories are rare compared to the many of people who have the graft every day. But the point I want to make in that is they have no shackles other than what they're trying to create themselves. They have very low cost base, we'll say, and they realise very early that that's what they're doing and that's what they're off doing. So I'll ask if, I suppose, people here or people listening, what do they want in their lives? What are they good at? What are they passionate about? What is your cause? So we heard about Anne-Marie and the charitable cause and what you do for what you believe in. There's many stories in revolutions where people die for the cause. But then there's a question of what cause are you giving up your life for? Every day your life is going away on some cause. Is it a worthy cause? Another tech entrepreneur I'll tell you a story about, we'll call him Jay. Right? Jay is an American guy who probably made money very early in his career. He sold a business in his early 20s and he felt he was going to retire at maybe the age of 22. Right? He said that was it. He had all the money because he thought money was it. So at 22 he had retired. 2 years later, he talked about he lived a 2 years hedonist existence and realised there was more to life than this. He sold the houses and properties he had, and he decided he was going to invest in money in learning how to start businesses. 6 years later, he sold the first business. A year later, he sold another one. And maybe 2 years later, he sold another one. Now, again, you could say that this was for the money, but he decided what skill he wanted to create. And it took him a number of years to learn this. And I think the lesson in that is that the fact that he had the money, but he got rid of all that to invest in, and he nearly had zero by the time he realised his first sale. But that didn't matter to him. It didn't matter to him. And I think the interesting thing about many entrepreneurs is that it's not the financial security. That doesn't matter. Yes, it doesn't mean that they sacrifice everything, including family or lifestyle or whatever. It doesn't mean they have everything going into that. There's a balance. I suppose some of the points I think everyone can learn from entrepreneurs like that is that they've decided what they want to do with their lives, and that's how they dedicate themselves to it. So I mean, many people, including myself, we have a balance what we want to achieve. Do I want to sacrifice everything down that path? I don't. I have family. I have a balance in my life and things I want to achieve. It doesn't go all down one path. So think about sort of kind of what you want. A little bit of my own story then. I started my first business in '94. I closed down that business in 2003 through kind of after the whole dot-bomb stuff. By 2008, and the point of which I want to talk about here, is in 2008 I was CEO of a company that I invested in, but it wasn't quite going the way we wanted to go. So I was exiting as CEO. At the same time, I had a bit of an illness. I won't go into details, but it meant that I couldn't really work for about 2 months. And at the same time, I was finishing up on a program with Enterprise Ireland with Stanford University called the Leadership for Growth. And it was for tech CEOs to create the leaders of the future. And Enterprise Ireland do great work in that space. So in a sense, it was opportune for me to have the time to think, coming out of a program like that with all, say, the right learnings and the right environment, to think about what I was going to do. And a few things dawned on me, right? So I wanted to do something that was going to be of great impact to tech CEOs, because I liked working with tech CEOs. And I wanted to find something that was, because I've realised some of my own flaws, if you like, is I like a challenge. And liking a challenge as an entrepreneur means taking great risk and sometimes risking too much. So I had to balance that. And another way is kind of, again, one of my other flaws, I tend to be too strategically thinking, always fighting above my weight, always thinking too far ahead as opposed to the here and now. And you had to balance a number of things. So I decided to start a business that was going to build sales channels, find partners for technology companies all over the world, and help these companies be successful. It was suitably challenging, and it was a big enough problem to solve. Right? But then what previous experience did I have in this space? I had some success with partners, and I like working with people. And I always find ways to make these things work. But there's two quotes that come to mind. And there's one that's attributed to Bill Gates, even to Albert Einstein. But a man we saw recently speaking to RDS is Malcolm Gladwell, and he talked about it in one of his books. It takes 10,000 hours to become world class in something. And to me, it's, yeah, that's 5 years. I can do that. 5 years of doing this, and I'd be world class at building sales channels for technology companies. Right. So the second quote, I think it's Jim Rohn. If you've ever heard of Jim Rohn, he's a motivational speaker, philosopher, US guy, very, very interesting and very funny. And again, another one got to do with sort of leading your path. This is not the quote, but I'm going to tell you this one now because I just thought of it. Is we follow what society expects of us. And Jim Rohn would say to that, don't follow the trodden path that could have been made by a cow. But the quote that was opportune to me at that particular time was, he said, if you wanted to become front of the line, first of all, you have to get in line, keep moving up the line. No, sort of stay in line and keep moving up the line. Now, those two quotes to me were all about focus. Now, it's very easy to say those things. Staying in line is the hardest one. It's easy to get in line, but when it's not quite working, when it's not bringing in the money that you need for the other balance in your life, your family, right? So when it's not doing that, kind of what do you do? How do you kind of keep that staying in line, keep that focus, keep clocking up your 10,000 hours to become world class in it, keep that building. So it takes perseverance and great resolve. And I suppose I always talk about sort of focus and conviction in what you're doing and finding a way to make it work. And when you challenge yourself, you do find a way. There's always another twist. The entrepreneurial journey is all about learning. It's all about adjusting what you're doing, trying this with different clients, trying a different message, looking for ways around problems. And you get fairly innovative in these things. And I think about a story, again, putting people in extreme situations is always interesting. They make great movies out of it. There was a story about a soldier in Vietnam. And himself and his platoon were going across a meadowy green open area, and they were ambushed. And this guy got to cover, and he looked back, his friend was down. So without thinking, up and gone, out picked up his best mate off the green and carried him back to cover. When he got back to cover, he had 17 bullets in him. But he could only think about saving his friend, getting back to cover. That's the focus and conviction that people need in chasing their cause or their purpose in life. I want to bring you back to a point now about sort of how you spend your time. How you spend your time and how you spend your money. At that same time for me, I realised that, yes, I had investments. Now this is 2008, right? We'll bring you back up to the present shortly. In 2008, before the world fell apart, and I had invested in properties and I had invested in different things in other companies, and some of them I would say weren't aligned to my new thinking. And look at, so yes, we're going to, I realised at that point, being an entrepreneurial person, I am my best investment. So if I didn't have to service baggage, debts, whatever it may be, on something that wasn't me or helping me get better at what I do, it was wrong. So there's a question, again, a thought about how well you're progressing towards your goals. And that question is, how do you split your time according to 3 different categories? How much of your time do you spend cleaning up the messes you made yesterday? And equally, how much of the money you pay back to debts that's paying for yesterday? Right? How much of your time do you spend on what you're supposed to be doing today? And how much of your time do you spend on creating what's to be your future? And that is your measure of progress towards your goals. Something we do in our deliberate CEO mastermind group sessions with tech CEOs, we talk about 5-year goals. And we ask them to think out, they have their business plans and so on, but we ask them to visualize what their business looks like. How many customers they have, what team do they have in place, revenues and all these things are in the business plan. But we're asking them sort of to visualise what sort of marketing activities are they doing, where do they stand in reputation-wise out in the industry. And we ask them, so what role are they playing in that? Do they have to be the CEO if they are today? What do they really want to do? And we're asking them to paint out those 5-year goals. And in some cases now, we ask them now, multiply it by 3, multiply by 5. Why not? And then think about sort of, why can't you do that? It's 5 years suitably far enough away. It's always 5 years people pick with these things. Then we ask people, now, if you're out there with your 5 years, I think the challenge and the people have with doing that is to try to knit up everything they're doing today to get there. So in 2008 for me, I was thinking about what I wanted to do. And I wanted to build an international services business providing sales channel development services for technology companies all over the world. So another part of that sort of, could I match everything up to where I was today at the start of my 10,000 hours? I couldn't. And that was okay. I knew what the future looked like. I just didn't know how I was going to get to it. I was starting at a point that I had to build out a scalable business, but I only see, say, the next few months ahead. So the headlights in the night. So mapping out that 6 months very clearly of what's going to bring you to that end point. I think that's very important, and that bit you can see clearly. There's a whole bit in the middle I would suggest you do not try and see clearly. It will become clear as you move forward. For me, 5 years on, 10,000 hours maybe, over, I have a lot to learn. I always do, and I think it'll continue. I would tell you today sort of how clear I am to those 5-year goals. Not quite where I want it to be, but I'll tell you that Tonego will have offices all over the world, providing services to technology companies all over the world. We will have offices in every key market, and we're doing this in a franchise model. I didn't know that 2 years ago, never mind 5 years ago. And we're out in the market now pushing that. And if I didn't strive for that, what I saw with that vision, I wouldn't get to where that is, and just keeping in line. So I think it's down to, there's that belief, and the journey for an entrepreneur, yes, as much as a physical journey, but it is an emotional drive of belief that challenges constantly hitting at your belief, but also fighting back and getting beyond that to deliver on what to do. So I hope you enjoy that, and I hope you have a couple of thoughts about your own situation and whatever you want to do. So thank you.